Here in the audience that we've got to know each other, and we spend every week together on a Zoom call, it seems like. And so, Rachel, if you'd like to come up and explain a little bit more about what we're trying to accomplish here.
Good morning, y'all. Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Rachel Van Alstyne. I'm a mother, advocate, and a social worker from Northern Indiana in support of House Bill 1404 and its amendments. In April of 23, my 12-year-old son woke me in the middle of the night with suicidal ideations. As I held and consoled him in his fear and pain, crying so hard he could barely breathe, he told me he didn't want to live anymore. By morning, I had uncovered that he had been horribly abused and bullied at school by a group of boys that were telling him to kill himself for almost a month. He said he feared telling me because he knew I would do something and he thought he could handle it. I immediately contacted the school the next morning and reported the incident. This resulted in an investigation uncovering a horrific, unhealthy school environment of 17 children that were participating in these behaviors and abusing not only my son, but other children. I was told that because so many children were involved, no consequences were given. I additionally reported my concerns to the school board and administration only to receive no response. To this day, if you pull my son's school record, there is no proof that it ever happened. In loco parentis literally translates in place of the parent. Our schools assume the role of parent while our children are in their care under U.S. educational law. That said, our children's safety is the #1 responsibility of our schools, DOE, and DCS. And yet all of them point to all of you, openly admitting that without legislation and resources, they cannot protect our children. We've learned that educational law is merely recommendation, as the laws have no teeth. They have no consequences if not followed. And because of this, our schools answer to no one, and they know it. However, behind closed doors, they tell us as parents that they are not equipped to handle these level of behaviors or complete investigations regarding the abuse and neglect of our children. The system is broken from the top down, and thus as above, so below, knowingly leaving our children in immense danger, which is in fact systemic child neglect. Shared with you today within your committee reports are also written testimonies from more parents and advocates, including the parents of Rio Alred, who died in our community by suicide in March of 22, and the parents of Madison O'Brien, who died by suicide in April of 24, both due to known bullying at school that went unreported and unresolved. We must ask ourselves, if all of the adults and institutions tasked with ensuring our children's safety are moving in fear, self-preservation, and in some cases personal agendas, what does this mean for our children? Trust me when I say we fully understand fear. There is no greater fear as a parent than the fear, or even more horrific, the reality of losing your own child. We have the ability to choose another way, which begins with honoring our children's voices in truth. To ignite this child safety and human rights movement in Indiana, we urge you to support House Bill 1404 and its amendments. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, we'll continue to move forward. Tiffany Glick.
Good morning, Chairman Devon and members of the Family, Children, and Human Affairs Committee. My name is Tiffany Glick. I'm a licensed school-based speech-language pathologist that has had the privilege of serving Indiana families in the Indianapolis area as well as across the state. I currently work as a virtual speech pathologist, providing services to students and their families. Prior to working virtually, I was in a brick-and-mortar building, and during that time, many of my coworkers and I made countless calls to DCS voicing concerns of the welfare of many of our students. As mandated reporters, if we see something, we must say something. If it's not documented, then it didn't happen. With each nerve-wracking and gut-wrenching call made, silence ensued. I cannot recall a single time one of my reports or one of my coworkers' reports were followed up with or what action had taken place. Because of this negligence and lack of communication, one of my dear sweet students' life was taken by members of her own family due to severe negligence and abuse she endured for as long as she was my student and prior to my leaving. You see, we all reported as we are instructed each school year with our mandated child welfare training. However, for her, all of our training and phone calls did nothing to protect her. All we could do was clean her up each day she entered our building, which entailed giving her a bath to remove the dirt, grime, and stench from her poor body that was constantly covered in scratches and bruises. The staff made sure she had clean clothes each day, and we would remove the pungent clothing she wore that were also too extremely small for her body shape. We'd utilize the washer and dryer we had access to and made sure she had clean clothing. The new clothing she was given rarely made it back, but the pungent and extremely small articles of clothing were back on her poor little body. And something you should know about this particular student of mine, she was nonverbal. So she couldn't tell us with her words, but rather her profound behaviors. And the day I received the call that she was gone, I dropped to my knees and I thanked God for taking her home to protect her, because we all failed her on earth. It was my responsibility to help her find her voice, and I never got that chance. And that is why I'm standing in front of all of you today, pleading with the state of Indiana to do better for these children. It is my hope that House Bill 1404 and its amendments will open the lines of communication between parents, schools, DOE, DCS, and clear the path to ensuring all children's rights to safety. As educators, we spend a significant amount of time with our students. We love each one of them deeply, and they trust us. The systems that are currently in place to help them are actually hindering them from living a safe and healthy life. We must lead by example as the adults sworn to protect them and ensure their voices and truth are heard. They are telling us both in their spoken words, but also in their unspoken words and unhealthy and unsafe behaviors. It's time we truly listen and collectively act with urgency. Thank you for your time and supporting House Bill 1404 and its amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Any questions?
Good morning, Chairman Devon and members of the Family and Children's Committee. I support House Bill 1404 and its amendments. My name is Tamara Wilson, and I stand before you today as a survivor of the foster care system. My life was dramatically changed when I was removed from my mother's care due to her struggle to addiction. While I understand the need to intervention, and I believe the story I could have been different if House Bill 1404 had been in place. This bill acknowledged the importance of supporting families while protecting children. If my mother had been given access to drug treatment and resources, perhaps she could have overcome her addiction and remained my parent. My mother was never given the opportunity to obtain drug rehabilitation services. She never was given the opportunity in custody. She was never given a chance to get us back ever in life. No one asked why my mother was using drugs, what the trauma was, what was she coping with from or escaping from. No one asked, but whether she was criticized in prison for her drug use, while also she never provided her with any kind of drug treatment. Furthermore, no one ever asked to hear my voice. My siblings and I were placed in foster care when I was 6 years old. I grew up in the system, and it's important that everyone here understands that the system that was supposed to protect us failed us. More than failed us, caused us more harm and abuse than my mother ever would have. I support House Bill 1404 because I have guaranteed Guaranteed if Gail had been in place, that would have ensured my voice was heard and I would have been protected. When I disclosed that my foster father was sexually abusing me at 9 years old, instead of my cries for help was dismissed and leading into further trauma. And my abuser was never held accountable. Rather than listen to my truth and ensure my safety, the system proceeded to institutionalize me and medicate me and imply that I was lying, only to send me back to my abuser home over and over again. The HB 1404 offers a chance to prevent such failures and prevent children in need of protection and support that deserve, as well as truly support parents that need drug treatment and rehabilitation. If we keep silencing children's voices and truth guaranteed will continue. Cycles of generation abuse and trauma, not only within families, but by very systems that are tasked for ensuring their safety. I humbly request that you recognize the important House Bill 1404 and move the bridges that massively gaps the current existing in child safety in Indiana.
Thank you. Any questions? One question here, Representative Groceries.
It's really just a comment. So Mrs. Wilson, is that your name?
Yes.
I just want to thank you for your courage. I want to applaud your resiliency. And as much as we are sorry that your voice was not heard, we all heard you today. And so we thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you. Next, Tiara Porterhouse.
Good morning, Chairman Devon and members of Family and Children's Committee. My name is Tiara Porterhouse, native of Elkhart, Indiana. As a mental health and wellness advocate, I volunteer with multiple nonprofit organizations assisting children with mental health and behavioral issues in our schools since 2023. What I've witnessed in attending school advocacy meetings for children and continual stories shared by both students and parents is shocking. One of the most significant observations is the obvious disconnection between the schools, parents, DOE, and DCS. While the adults tasked with ensuring child safety are pointing fingers, blaming and shaming one another, the children are crying out. The crying out looks like bullying and abusive behaviors, including verbal, emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. We know all behaviors are communication, whether we like the behavior or not. Our state bullying data reflects that many of these incidents go unreported and are also falsely reported by our school districts across the state. In addition to us having the evidence of school districts across Indiana masking child abuse and neglect, we also have significant evidence that there are not appropriate interventions for the child exhibiting bullying and abusive behaviors outside of suspension or expulsion, which we know does not address the root cause. We need better, more effective resources and solutions intended to address the root of the behaviors rather than staying the current course of preparing children for jail. Children are telling us their truth if we're willing to listen. I've had countless children share with me that they regularly witness habitual acts of violence against both students as well as teachers, in addition to the constant classroom disturbances that prevent learning. We must keep in mind that we are part of what makes or breaks our children. We need all hands on deck. From parents to school faculty to DOE to DCS to community providers to all of our legislators. How we show up and what we allow to exist in our school cultures and environments speaks volumes to children. If we are knowingly allowing this to exist, if we are knowingly allowing school districts to falsely report the abuse and neglect of our children and their experiences, we are all responsible and must be accountable to change these gaps in child safety and well-being immediately. Bottom line is we need HB 1404 to ensure that all will be held accountable together and be responsible responsible together for the sake of our children and their futures, because they are our next generation of leaders, and we must lead by example, not by fear. And not by fear. Thank you for listening to my testimony supporting HB 1404.
Thank you. Any questions from committee members? Thank you very much. Veronica Embry.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Ronnie Embry from ISTA. ISTA stands in support of this bill. We know there are incidents that occur. There was a bill passed, I believe, last year that you were supposed to report incidents and schools aren't reporting. And all the agencies need to be talking. And if I may switch hats for a minute. I'm a mom that's buried a kid that went through the system. They were my former students. And one is a social worker now, and one's in the ground. And this needs to be done, so I'm sorry I switched to mom mode, but this is very serious. And the bully and those bullied all need the help, because often they bully because they are being abused. So it's not just throw the kids aside. We've got to do better helping our kids, because no one should have to bury a child. Thank you.
Thank you. It's Adam Krupp, and I want to introduce Adam Krupp as our newest DCS director. And Adam, I want to welcome you. And I know you're new to the administration, but I know you're a man of faith, and you got some big shoulders. And I know we all want to see you succeed. We'd love to all put you out of business. And I know you're losing a great comrade today or this week, Katie Collins. Kate is leaving us, or leaving DCS. I'll say she's leaving us because I talk to her about it twice a week. And we're going to miss her. But I know she's going to go on and do good things. And so we got to pray for this administration. There's a lot of evil in this world. And we got to expose it and deal with it, and this is what we're doing here. So, Adam, sorry to put you on the spot like that, but welcome to DCS, welcome to our committee, and we're rooting for you to do some great things. So,
thank you, Chairman. I appreciate the kind words, and just so you know, the challenge coin you provided me has been in my pocket every day since we met. Every day, even on Saturdays and Sundays, because evil never stops, and the work that DCS performs continues regardless of the hour and the day. I don't have prepared remarks, so I'm going to pivot a little bit from what I was going to say based on the courage and the testimony from the folks that we've heard from. Even on the bills unrelated to 1404, there's been a lot of conversation about trauma and mental health. I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't include our family case managers at DCS as part of that trauma discussion. The things they see, the things they hear, and the things they experience on a daily basis. They are not perfect, but they are in front of it, right? They are in the eye of the problem, and they see what happens. So unfortunately, when we are required to take action by law, is those family case managers that are subjected to the conditions of the home and the abuse and neglect that is occurring, that they are the first responders. They are the front line. They are seeing it. We're the ones that hear about it. We're the ones that read about it. They see it. I now see it in the couple of weeks that I've been in this role. I've been called to serve in this role for a variety of reasons. I do believe one of them is to reform the child welfare program in Indiana, to reform and transform Indiana's Department of Child Services. I'm here for that. So those who have courageously given their testimony today, just know that I am here to listen, and I'm here to partner with all of you. Bray Lynn is in the room. She gave testimony. I met with her recently for the first time. I have communicated with her regularly since, and she has sent folks to me to try to look into problems, and I've responded immediately. I know sometimes government employees, government officials can look cold-hearted and disengaged and lacking empathy, but I say all that to say I had no intention of sharing this today, but in the spirit of the testimony and the courage and the tears we've heard, I too will be brave, and I will share with this committee and this audience part of the reason I believe I was called to serve in this role. I'm an advocate of mental health, children. I have 3 children, aged 11, 7, and 16 months. 25 years ago, I survived a suicide attempt of my own. And it's taken me about 24 years to be brave enough to share that with anybody. But I'm standing in front of this committee to do that. Okay? 25 years ago, I was a high school teacher. So the subject of this bill is not a foreign concept to me. Okay? So with that said, you know, we have worked with the chairman on this bill. We've had open discussions about where DCS as an entity is. So with that background, my personal history, my connection, the empathy that I have for everybody in this room, I regretfully have to stand in opposition to the bill as it's written. But again, I do want to say, as a former high school teacher, my parents were educators. My father became an administrator, school board, after a long career as a principal. Bullying is a very serious issue. Nobody can dispute that. I would never come up here and try to trivialize or minimize the role that bullying plays in our youth, in their mental health, their safety in our schools. That said, this bill completely changes the mission of the Department of Child Services. Right? DCS's mission is to lead Indiana's response to allegations of child abuse and neglect by parents, guardians, and custodians. Requiring DCS to assess all allegations of child-on-child abuse, as reported by our schools, will completely reshape DCS by firmly entrenching us into K-12 system and placing us in the schools. Now, I said I'm here, and I believe I was called to this role to be part of the transformation and reforming child welfare and DCS. What I just said does not conflict with that. I believe this is a conversation that needs to be had. But I do not believe the solution is requiring DCS to investigate all allegations of abuse in our schools, child-on-child abuse. I think there's probably a multi-year reform effort regarding DCS, but I fear that doing so now, in short order, and inserting us into a situation that is not aligned with the mission and why this organization exists at its primary level, could potentially break the system in ways that we don't fully appreciate today. So last week at the Ways and Means Committee hearing, I testified about DCS generally, and one of the statistics I shared was about the Child Abuse and Neglect Hotline in Indiana. And the data that I shared was that in fiscal year 24, there were 214,000 reports to the Child Abuse and Neglect Hotline. And to put that into context, that puts Indiana 5th in the country, behind California, Texas, Florida, and New York. Indiana's 5th in the total number of reports to the Child Abuse and Neglect Hotline. And those are the reports of allegations of abuse and neglect under current law. Okay. So 214,000 sounds like a lot. Let's make it sound like a lot more. Monday through Friday, 626 a day are coming into that hotline. 626. So while I'm standing here today, it's happening. Allegations of abuse and neglect in Indiana are coming into that hotline during this committee hearing. Saturday and Sunday, it's an average of 220 per day. Again, 214,000 in a year. The hotline staffed by family case managers who are specifically trained to handle allegations of child abuse and neglect, again, in that context of parent, guardian, custodians, so that they are safe at home in their home environment. Adding in bullying, child-on-child allegations of abuse coming from schools, you can imagine what these numbers become, right? 214,000 exponentially increases on a daily basis. I mean, based on the testimony we've heard and the examples that are out there, this is not, this isn't once in a while. It sounds like it's a systemic problem that would balloon these numbers to where I worry, like I said, break the system. The hotline for abuse and neglect would become overwhelmed. Okay? And someday, sure, we might be able to hire an army of people to handle these calls, but that's going to take some significant amount of time. So, those are the remarks and the comments that I wanted to share today, starting personally, but also officially on behalf of DCS as a government agency and what we are called to do, what our mission is, and what we are currently capable of. You've heard lots of stories, lots of comments. I won't dispute any of them because I believe them to be true. I've read many of them. I've had people come to me in the 3 weeks I've been here to tell me the system is broken and to give me clear-cut examples of how it's broken. My commitment is to fix it. I'm not going to point the blame or point a finger at anybody. I'm not pointing a finger at schools. I'm not pointing a finger at courts. I'm not pointing a finger at this body. What I said last week is that all of us just need to partner together to do what's right. That's not blame. That's an invitation so that we can work together. So again, in the bill in its current form as written, on behalf of the Department of Child Services, I regretfully must stand here and oppose. Thank you for your time.
I understand. Any questions, Representative Summers?
Thank you and welcome.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
You've only been here for a while. You see this piece of legislation. Do you have anything to give us that makes this better? Do you have any ideas, solutions, whims on your top of your mind that would help us if this isn't the right, 1404 is not the right piece of legislation, and it's not saying the right things, what should it say?
Well, I don't have a solution. I will say, having been a teacher from a family of educators, bullying's been going on forever. And there seems to be something that not many people have been able to solve yet. I mean, are there technical tweaks to bills all the time? Yes, I think we've shared some of those possibilities. I don't have a solution, but I don't believe the right solution is asking the Department of Child Services by mandate to handle every allegation of bullying in our schools, child on child, and doing so within a 5-day period. I think it overwhelms the system, whereas we need to fix it. We're going to overwhelm it before we have a solution. So I would be happy to huddle with experts, my team, anyone in this room, to generate and brainstorm potential solutions. I don't know that they would be timely enough, but I am happy to have that conversation. Yes.
Representative Gosseries.
Chairman Devon, I just want to thank you for hearing this bill today. Since I was called to this role, I've been trying to come up with solutions. The testimony that we heard from the speech and language pathologist, I could stand there and say the exact same testimony as a licensed clinical social worker in our buildings. Text this morning, my best friend who's a superintendent. I just want to thank you for the invitation. I thank you for your text this morning before this committee. I accept your invitation. I am so encouraged by the words you just shared. I am thankful that you are in the role that you're in, and I really have hope with Chairman Devon, with this body of committee members, that this is going to get better. It has to get better for the sake of our children. I just want to thank you, and I will be happy to partner with you.
Thank you.
Representative Burton.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. So you're in opposition to this bill, and the question I have, like, what we cannot, from my perspective, I'm the newest one here, and from our perspective, we can't sit on our hands. There is a whole lot of issues going on, and I asked to come to this committee specifically because there are children sleeping on cots in Vanderburgh County and with a myriad of other issues. So for the next 10 months, what are your goals? What are your priorities if what's been proposed by the chairman isn't the solution, what are you looking to do in the next 10 months that put Hoosiers in a better place than what we currently are under the current system?
Well, over the next 10 months, that certainly affords an opportunity to have collaborative roundtables, open dialogue with everybody that's involved, right? Stakeholders in the system. I can't just huddle with a team of Department of Child Services team members and come up with a solution. It's going to need to be a collaborative effort. When you mention children sleeping on cots in Vanderburgh County, are you referring to DCS offices?
Yes.
Yeah, so I did address that last week, right, in the Ways and Means Committee hearing. I appreciated the question about children sleeping in DCS offices because it was a story that needed to be told and one that I was happy to finally paint the full picture to. I think some of the things you will read, newspaper articles, for example, they don't tell the story. And the story, I won't go on and on, but the story that I learned, because I too had an emotional reaction to some of the things I read, once I got inside, as they say, and I found out, children are placed in foster homes or residential facilities. There's high acuity needs children that unfortunately get displaced and sent back to DCS. So DCS is working round the clock to find a solution. So if we send a child to a foster home that is prepared and capable of caring for that child, or if we send a child severely behaviorally challenged where safety of others is a risk, staff members, other children in that home, to a residential facility, there are times where even that facility will send them back to DCS. That's happening around the country, and it's been happening for a long time. So it's not a rhetorical question, and I'm not expecting an answer, but my thought is when I hear that, I say, what are we supposed to do at that point, right? When they come back to us, all we can do is continue working to try to find another location with community-based partners, providers. We have hundreds of contracts with organizations around the state. The reality is there are times, whether it be a day, 2 days, a week, there is no other option because no one will take the child. DCS will care for the child in our office. That's not ideal, but we will take the child because we have no choice, right? We need to do that for the safety and well-being. The children are fed, they are taken care of, they are supervised. When they are sleeping, on a roll-away bed, an air mattress, children are not sleeping on the floor. I've asked that. That was my first day. I asked that question. I said, I want to be very clear. Children are not sleeping on the floor. I don't want them sleeping on couches or under a desk, and that has all been addressed. So we have 2 staff members. Someone's awake at all times, right? It's not like a child is asleep and a staff member then is sleeping on the couch. That by rule, we do not allow that. We make sure, hygiene, food, everything's taken care of. So I will say, and I'll close out by saying, we do the absolute best we can there. Other states, there are babies and toddlers in those offices. And there was a report just the day before I testified about that in Kentucky and Georgia. Ours, as of a week ago, we had 3. They were 17 years old and 16 years old, all teenagers. In some cases, they refused to leave because they don't want to go back to foster care, or they don't want to go to a facility. They would rather be in our office where, sadly, they feel safe. And sometimes that is the best we can do with this system. So I just want to make sure I tell that story. The system is flawed. DCS is not perfect. With 4,000 employees, there are always going to be some that don't represent us proudly, and my job is to address that. In the few short weeks that I've been there, I've tried to do my part, brick by brick, piece by piece, every interaction one at a time, to start building and cultivating a culture of engaged, purpose-driven public servants that our state can be proud of. So over the next 10 months, those are some of the areas of focus, but high priority, of course, is safety, but building a culture of people that know that's why they show up every day, and to never forget that, that's my goal.
Representative Burton, you had one more question?
Yeah, thanks so much, Mr. Chairman.
And then Representative Jackson after that.
Last question I had. In 2025, do you feel a hotline is the best method for reporting issues, for reporting?
I'm happy to evaluate alternatives. I would say today, just to give you the data on, in terms of best, right? Subject, eye of the beholder. When law enforcement call the hotline, we answer every call on average within 16 seconds. Non-law enforcement, 22 seconds. I would say if people don't think the hotline is doing a good job, I'm open to hearing what alternatives are. But with that data point, that's pretty effective, right? That's not, I used to be commissioner of the Department of Revenue. When I got there, people would wait on hold for an hour or two at a time, right? We all hear about the IRS. You might wait for 4 hours, put the phone down, go do something, come back, and it's still waiting. We don't have that issue. And I would say if our calls were not answered at that level, it would be a problem. So that is about as fast as you can humanly go, answering those very important, critical calls. So that's a check in the good column. I'm sure there are criticisms, and I'm happy to look at those.
Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to first of all start off by saying thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you being here. This is going on the 7th year of being on this committee. Not to mention, I have a lot of history with children in DCS, etc. But my concern is the accountability as far as the workers are concerned, who I have heard countless times over and over again in this committee as well as outside of this committee, not being held accountable for their lack of job performances. And I'm just wondering, how are you planning to address it? And what is going to be the recourse?
Thank you for sharing the concern. I will tell you, everywhere I've been, and now here at DCS, accountability is not going to be an issue. I hold people to a standard of excellence. As public servants, it requires it. At DCS, I believe it is probably, I won't say the most, but probably one of the most important, difficult jobs in all of state government. And I've been at 4 agencies and feel I have a good enough perspective to see what our employees and our fellow public servants deal with on a day-to-day basis. That said, my job is to find a way to balance the emotional, mental, and even physical strain on our employees with accountability and standards of excellence that I tend to hold, so that people's performance doesn't suffer as a result of just the subject matter at hand for the job that we ask them to do and the job that they sign up for. So we will have programs in place. We will take care of the well-being of our staff. That doesn't give anybody a free pass in terms of accountability. One of the very first things I did, probably day 2, was I asked for performance evaluations for the staff for the most recent year and the year before that, because in my opinion, in every government agency, when somebody has performance concerns, issues, and does not meet expectations of the job for 2 years in a row, then somebody's not being held accountable. And we need to make sure that there are either improvement plans in place or that they perhaps are just not right for that job. So accountability with me at DCS should no longer be a concern. But if there are concerns, I'm happy to listen to them, because I can't know everything with an agency this big with 4,000 employees.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions, comments? Representative Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome. So my issue would be that a lot of abused children may not have access to make that phone call to the abused hotline. And the next person that they are going to reach out to is probably the educators that they trust. So my question is, if someone does go to an educator and they talk about things like that, what is the normal protocol right now for that? What does that educator do from that point?
So if the abuse is occurring by a parent, guardian, or custodian, then the mandatory reporting would ask that they call into that hotline and report that allegation of abuse. But again, the child-on-child bullying, abuse that's happening in the school, that It's just not part of our setup and our current mission.
We've been working with DOE a little bit on this too. I know it's not the DCS's, they're not always aware, right? So, and a lot of the stuff gets screened out through the hotline calls and stuff that, I don't know how, we got to do better. Our kids are dying, right? And we have to do better. So, and I know we don't normally do this, but can we all pray right now and for Adam and his new position and us to come along the side? It's not us against them, it's us against evil. And they're trying to do their darndest. And I've shadowed some family caseworkers in the past, and it's a job that nobody wants. And so those that are there, we need to come along the side of them. And they have a mission that they're called upon. But the devil wants to take us down and create division and kill, steal, and destroy, and that's what he's trying to do. But if we pray for one another, and Adam, we're going to pray for you for wisdom and guidance and protection as well. So let's pray. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Chairman.
And Representative Jordan, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This group should probably know that Adam Krupp is a graduate of Jefferson Elementary. He's a Jefferson Jet, and my daughter is actually the principal of that elementary school now. So he's on a trajectory to do great things at DCS.
Well, and we'll never know if this job gives him gray hair or not.
No, I had it 3 weeks ago.
The job, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Was there anybody else that wanted to testify on 1404? Seeing none. I know there was some handouts too that Rachel, you had that you wanted to. Did you have any more testimony on handouts of testimony? Did you give them Caleb? Okay, so Caleb, if you want to pass those around as well. Okay. We'll get them to you on some others that want to testify. So again, we're going to hold this bell. We're going to try to get it better and keep a spotlight on and trying to help these kids that are dealing with this. So I want to thank everyone that testified, Rachel especially. She's had to put up with me for many months, and we're going to continue to work and fight. We may not get it perfect, but we're going to put a spotlight on this issue that we can really, truly make a difference in these kids' lives. So there's a kid out there that's screaming for us to do better. So thank you all for coming on there.